I'm snacking on a Snickers, and I've been wondering for a long time, which is healthier, a Snickers or any one of these options? And I am a curious chef and a hungry hiker, and I've been wondering for a long time. Well, you, me, and the Colorado mountains are gonna find out. Let's do this thing. Hail, Chef Corso, Outdoor Eats, here to put you on the path to amazing meals on your outdoor treks. And what we're gonna do in this video is try to answer the question of which is healthier, this Snickers almond or any one of the other potential snacks that we could take along, whether that's a protein bar, granola bar, some desserts, a muffin, a cookie, all those things. So what we're gonna do is not necessarily cook in this video. We are gonna still talk about food, still a good thing in my opinion. But we're going to deep dive into this question, and because I've been curious about it for a while. And the thing about it here too, folks, is that I am not a nutritionist. I am not also a scientist. I'm a chef. I'm a curious chef. I like cooking outside and like teaching you how to do it. So what we're going to do is have a podcast style with 2 interviews with seasoned nutritionists out there to help me with my question. Yeah, so we're gonna deep dive into this from multiple different perspectives, multiple different angles, and multiple different options. Also, quickly, if you're new to Outdoor Eats, we provide fast, easy, and tasty recipes for elevated meals outdoors, all ready in 30 minutes or less, 10 ingredients or less, no pre-prep, no dehydrating. You can throw away your packaged meals and actually cook with your camp stoves. Yep, and I can teach you how to do it. We also have these great pocket-sized cookbooks that make a great gift, stocking stuffer for your trail buddy. Yep, you can pick those up right now. So let's get into it. And this one specifically, the Snickers almond, is one of my absolute favorites and does go on a lot of trips with me. And as I was thinking about this and looking at this here too, we've got nuts, which are generally healthy. We've got some chocolate, mostly healthy. And we've got multiple forms of sugar. And you know, those are caramel, this is nougat, plus some sugar in the chocolate. And you know, overall, that's not a terrible thing. You know, it clocks in at about 250 calories, which is not awful. You know, not that you need to eat, 5 of these in a day, but not a bad thing. So I'm really wondering, is this healthy, or is this a good option to take along? I don't think it's terrible, but I'm not quite sure yet. To help with this, I made a spreadsheet because, yeah, we need some comparables here. So let's take a look at the spreadsheet that I made to put a lot of these options next to each other just to get some understanding of where they stand for calories, for sugar, for added sugar, for protein, and for fat. And I put a lot of them on here too. I didn't select every single one because that would be too many. But what I did is I focused on the chocolate and peanut butter flavor across many different brands because it seems like it's pretty popular and a lot of brands have them. So I thought that was a good kind of relative starting point. And as you can see farther down, I did add some desserts to this because those can be calories and those can be snacks too. And even farther down, I do have a couple muffins because very similar ingredients, and a muffin can also give you calories and keep you moving. So I wanted to see how that compared. Other thing to think about as we're looking at this spreadsheet is that most of these are all some sort of combination of sugar, nuts, some oats, chocolate, some fat, and some other flavoring, and for the protein bars, some added protein, even though a lot of these options do have protein naturally. The desserts on here probably have some flour and or some added butter or fat to make it more desserty or just to change the overall structure. But very similar in their ingredients, and it's kind of funny to see all of these options, and most of them are pretty darn close to being the same. Crazy part too is that more bars keep coming out all the time. Like I don't know where they keep coming from, but they keep coming. We're going to use this spreadsheet as a reference point for both of the interviews coming up. And so our first interview is with Backcountry Foodie, and her name's Erin, and she's been doing this for a number of years. She and I both have very similar philosophies about how to put you on the path to great meals outdoors, to throw away your packaged meals and actually have things that you are excited for and flavors that you like. She looks at it for a little bit more ultralight and also from a strictly nutrition perspective, which I very much respect. So we're going to dig into this question about bars and snacks. All right, everybody. Since I am not a nutritionist, I am a chef. I'm a curious chef. I am reaching out to a couple nutritionists, and our first one here is Erin Owens Mayhew, and she is with Backcountry Foodie. And so she and I are going to chat a little bit about my query here as far as bars, general healthy, and overall ingredients and things. So, Erin, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Nice. So you're curious about bars too?
Well, I've looked into them over and over and over again myself, and actually, I don't even eat them anymore because I've eaten hundreds of them. So I actually have other things that I like to eat instead. So we can talk
Sure,
about
sure.
that
Well,
maybe too.
yeah, we can talk about some other options too if bars are not the right choice for folks. And tell folks where you're calling in from and tell folks about Backcountry Foodie.
So I'm calling in from small town, coastal California. And actually, I really love it. We lived in Seattle for almost 20 years. So now I live in a tiny town called Orchid, California. Nobody knows about it. I could drive 10 minutes to whatever I need. So it's actually really peaceful. So that's where I'm calling in today. Again, my name's Erin Owens Mayhew. I've been a dietitian for over 20 years and a backpacker also for over 20 years. Backcountry Foodie has evolved since 2017. How it came up is I had been a hospital dietitian for all that time. And then I kind of had a midlife crisis when I was turning 40. Decided I was tired of being in the hospital. I was tired of that 2 hour commute when I was in Seattle. So I decided to quit my job that I'd had for 10 years. When I'm turning 40, when you're supposed to like get a 401k, all those kind of things you're supposed to do. So I quit my job to hike the PCT. And in prepping for that, I'd never hiked more than 3 to 5 days at a time as I started panicking, like most through hikers, about food. Like, what am I going to eat for 5 months? How am I going to fuel my body? Like, am I going to like it? Is all the salt and the commercial food, all those kind of things. And also being the dietitian, I kind of was like, well, the things that are currently available aren't going to meet my needs. So then I started developing my own recipes in the kitchen, tinkering around like you do. And then lo and behold, it turned into something. And we're now, 8 years later? I have an online platform with recipes that I develop every month. We have an automated meal planner. We have a calorie calculator. And behind me, I have a food shop. So behind me, you can see all the shipping materials is what all that is. So it's just really grown into this really massive business that I do all sorts of things for backpackers.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, I think we have very similar stories and very similar missions, just sort of creating the recipes in a slightly different way. But I think both of our goals is
Mhm.
that people are educated about eating well outdoors and also doing something that's not just a standard package meal or just nuts and jerky for all your meals and all your snacks.
Exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe in taking your home diet into the backcountry. So that's part of my whole nutrition goal is if you spend so much time eating really well at home, take that with you instead of completely switching up your diet when you're backpacking.
I totally agree. And for me,
Yeah.
it's taking some fresh ingredients and having
Mhm.
meals that you're actually excited for, giving it better fuel for your long distance journeys. So for you folks out there, if you're a fan of outdoor eats recipes, definitely use Erin's recipes as another resource, especially for the longer haul backpacking trips and some resupply options where
Mhm.
fresh maybe isn't a great option. But again, we've got very similar missions.
Mhm.
We just want to help you eat well outside.
Yep.
So let's get into it. And so before we start with the bars and the healthy question is what is your favorite food right now? What are you eating a lot of?
Well, I haven't backpacked recently because I'm so busy making everybody else's food. But at home,
Sure.
we recently bought a barbecue grill. So anything that goes
Nice.
on the grill right now is what we're eating. So I'm loving grilled fish. I'm loving grilled vegetables. Like I'm loving anything we can throw on the grill. So that's something we're actually doing a lot of right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely the time of year for that, especially with the fresh veggies and things that are available.
Mhm.
Nice. So I shared over my big old spreadsheet with you. And, there are a lot of ways of eating these days. There's, as you know, and there's a philosophical reason, there's a specific dietary reason, there's a syndrome, there's hard preferences, all kinds of things to consider. So, in your mind, what is healthy and what is a good way of eating?
I strongly believe in there's no right or wrong way to eat. There's, like you said, so if you have a medical condition where you need to eat a certain way, then eat that way. If you have a diet preference that you, or an environmental reasons for eating that way, then eat that way. If you're an athlete and you need to perform a particular way, then you're going to fuel your body that way. The only thing I would say is kind of a bad way of eating is something that's going to affect your health long term. So there's science that says, saturated fat can cause heart disease. A lot of added sugars in excess with sedentary lifestyles could potentially, result in type 2 diabetes and overweight. I mean, there are those kind of things but that's an excess. So I think if you do something in moderation, and also I really believe, especially backpacking, if food makes you happy, like we were just saying, you enjoy your food, then just something that makes you happy will make the experience that much better. So that's kind of it's kind of an overall, you do you, like whatever works for you is what's going to work for you. It's not going to necessarily work for everybody else.
Yeah, I think it's a really subjective term that can hold a lot of weight for some certain groups or some certain conversations. And what I've noticed through my life and eating is that sometimes healthy even shifts based on some new information that is gained or uh, understanding
Well,
and,
where
and
you are in your
flavor.
life too, life phases. Like right now,
Absolutely.
I'm in my late 40s. I can't eat like I did when I was in my 20s. So, I mean, just that in itself, I've had to really make some shifts too.
Absolutely, yeah. So, but I definitely agree with you. It's you do you, and get as educated as you can for your specific path for eating. So I'm trying to figure out this query and this question because I have eaten many bars. I've also one of my roles previously was as a food product developer. So I got to create granola bars, ice cream, salad dressing, smoothies, all kinds of things. So I kind of know what goes into these snacks for us. But I was really curious, and specifically this how this started was I was eating a Clif Bar, and then I was eating a Pro Bar meal, and then I ate a Snickers peanut. And I realized this is a lot of the same stuff. And some of our healthier or breakfast bars are enrobed in chocolate, which I love. They're delicious. But does that affect the overall health of that specific bar? And so from the spreadsheet that I created, are there anything or any products that kind of call out to you as being, wow, that's really interesting, or this may be something to stay away from?
Well, unfortunately, I think a lot of it has to do with marketing. So a lot of the bars have very similar ingredients, have very similar nutrition profiles. It's how well the company markets it. You've got the small companies that are doing a really great job, but maybe they can't get out in the commercials and those things, so they don't sell as well. So a lot of those, again, kind of looking at your nutrition needs is, I think the different kinds of bars have different purposes. So if you need a quick energy bar, maybe more of a fruit-based bar that's going to give you quick energy with sugars, not necessarily added sugars, but natural sugars could give you quick energy versus like the Pro Bar meals. I think they serve a purpose is they could actually replace the meal if that's something that you're needing at the time. Or Snickers, they're my happy food. So it's not something that I normally eat at home on a regular basis, but I pack them in my backpack because if it's been raining all day, I'm struggling up a climb and I'm just like, I'm miserable. Snickers will always make me happy. So that's one of those kind of experiences that it serves a purpose. So yeah, and a lot of the bars, like too, if you need something, if you have diabetes or you're regulating your sugar, so something with more like fiber and protein. So looking at those kinds of bars. So it kind of all goes back to what are your personal needs and then choosing things that are going to meet those needs that works the best for you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like you. I love Snickers. One of my favorites is Snickers almond, um, which is actually slightly lower on the calorie scale. How about that? Good to know. What I was also curious on is as I was putting together some of these bars, both the kind of newer ones from the Lunas and the RX bars, but also comparing it to some classic granola bars like the Quaker Chewy and the Oat and Honey Nature Valley option as well. And what I notice is that the calorie count is very, very similar, and maybe the main difference is just the amount of sugar and or added sugar in there. But then I was also curious because a lot of these bars are on the sweeter side. It's like, so how do they compare to a cookie or to a Twinkie or some Ho Hos? and because those can be snacks as well.
Right.
And um, fun fact, ho-hos are pretty high in calories and pretty high in sugar. So
Mhm.
that's good to know. But then it was very interesting to compare some of them to just a chocolate chip cookie, like a home style chocolate chip cookie, whether that's packaged or from Whole Foods, where to me, it's almost a push as far as calories, sugars. They're really, really close as far as a couple grams here and there. And for me, that's again sort of like a push. And then have you seen these breakfast cookies?
Mhm.
And so how do you feel about those?
Again, kind of all going back to it, and I think again going back to the marketing is price. So if your cookies that you make at home or your breakfast cookies, those kind of thing, which is actually kind of was alluding to before, as I make my own cookies and bars and things now because I can control those ingredients in it that makes it what I need it to do. So if you can make your own cookie and it's similar to those store-bought cookies, it's significantly cheaper. So that's an option for you too. But again, it goes back to the nutrition profile. So like the chewy bars that might have a little bit more sugar in them, if you need sugar to get like, let's say you're hitting the wall or bonking and that kind of thing, that's when sugar can be a good purpose because that's going to get you over that hill. That's going to get you. But then the other thing is maybe that granola bar that has more fiber in it is going to help you long term because it slows down digestion. Your energy level is going to be more even keel. So, and then you got the protein bars. So those can serve a purpose at the end of the day when you need a little bit more protein for recovery. And getting older, we actually need more protein. We don't need to go in excess with protein, but we actually do need a little bit more for recovery. So you could have any of those bars throughout the day. I think the timing of when you need it, what the purpose is. So that's kind of my opinion on it.
Okay. Yeah, I think the breakfast cookie is a very interesting marketing situation, and I'm touching on marketing and packaging and messaging things from your thoughts earlier. Is it's a cookie I can eat for breakfast. Hooray, that's good. And I think this is like a sidebar, but I think some of our justification for breakfast foods is very interesting,
Mhm.
where we can have an apple Danish for breakfast or a donut, but we can't have a piece of pie for breakfast, even though very, very close to the
Similar
same
thing,
thing.
right?
Very, very similar things, similar dough, similar overall calories. So the label of breakfast cookie makes us feel a little bit better. And it does seem like this one does have a few more calories.
And
Not
if they
too
have
much
fiber in
protein.
it, it could actually almost be like a cereal bar. So it's a similar kind of thing. It's in a different form, a flattened cookie, but it's actually the same ingredients that you're going to have in like a cereal bar kind of thing. It's
Uh,
just marketed differently, like you said, all those kind of things. With you just change the form of it, it's going to be the same thing as some of those chewy granola bars.
right, for sure. And then farther down the list here, I just was curious on how much and how many calories is a Costco muffin and the classic Otis Spunkmeyer muffin. And
Mhm.
so the Otis Spunkmeyer is very, very similar to any of the bars out there, just a different form of how you want to get your chocolate chips or your peanut butter. But wow, the Costco muffin, 690. And granted, those are
Right.
big, so it's kind
They're
of like
giant,
two.
right,
Yeah, so it's like two in one. But nevertheless, if you
right,
guys need calories, throw a couple Costco muffins in your brain or your backpack
right.
because apparently that will keep you going. So that was just a funny one to throw in there. But so further along, and you've mentioned this a little bit as well, is sugars and added sugars. Does your body really care about the sweetener if it comes from a high fructose corn syrup, from a sugar cane, from agave, or more natural sources like dates or prunes or raisin juice?
Yes, I think so. So
Okay.
again, you've got the sugars that are just sugar, just glucose, sucrose, those kind of things. They serve a purpose. Again, in the front country, when you're sitting around at home, if you're sedentary working all day, they're not as good of a choice. But in the back country, when you're hiking, you need energy. So again, if there's those times, well, in triathletes too, you think of Ironman, they pop the chews, the energy gels, those kind of things. Those are sugars, just simple sugars that serve a purpose. So that's what I think. Those serve that purpose. The natural sugars, dates and fruit and those kind of things, have vitamins and minerals in them. They also have fiber in them, so they're meeting those needs that you're not getting from just a simple sugar. So cane sugar, brown sugar, natural raw sugars, all those are similar. I mean, you're getting different taste and those kind of things, but it's the same metabolism of those, versus the other, it's more of a complex carbohydrate that has some more fiber in it and some other things. So it slows down the digestion, like I said. So there is a difference in those.
Okay, so looking for your sugars from more natural sources, like the dates or the prunes, and making sure there's actually those in there. Because one thing that I have experience with when doing product development, we would use apple juice concentrate, pear juice concentrate, clarified pineapple juice concentrate as a sweetener. And yes, it looks better and looks healthier on a label, but it's actually incredibly sweet. I mean, the Brix was 65, really, really high. So it's basically like what we're adding honey or we're adding high fructose corn syrup.
We stripped out the fiber.
It's stripped out all the fiber. There's still a little bit of flavor of apple or pear there, but it was a little bit of a way to make the product more quote unquote natural. Yep, while still providing sweetness. So I think it's really important to turn over that package and really see what's in there, and be careful about some of these other sweeteners, and not alternative sweeteners or fake sweeteners, but ones that are derived from fruits, but then are actually just sweetener and syrups. Yeah, good thoughts. And speaking of sugars and some of the fake sugars like aspartame, ACE-K, sucralose, those type of things, do they have a place in our food?
So kind of going back to the home versus the backcountry diet. At home, if that's part of your diet that you need to manage your added sugar intake for diabetes or whatever reason, there's some syndromes, like you said, those kind of things where you need to watch your sugar intake. I think they serve a purpose and they're fine. But in the backcountry, I'm the dietitian. I really focus on performance and fueling and making your body function, that kind of thing. Is they don't provide energy, they don't provide the calorie, they don't provide the natural fibers and those kind of things like fruit bars and those things. So I think in the backcountry they're not as useful. But again, if you need to manage your sugar intake in the backcountry and that's something that you need to transition from home to the backcountry, then that's fine. But if you're eating just a regular diet, I think that you're going to get a better benefit of some like the dates and the dried fruits and those kind of things.
Gotcha. And then could you chat a little bit about how your body and your brain registers these alternative sugars?
This is something I'm going to take a deep dive in later on this year because I'm really kind of curious. There's a lot of my understanding is there's a lot of mixed research about it, is that, well, sugar, like I was talking about, makes you happy. It reaches that pleasure center in your brain. So there's things where the thought is, from what I understand, is that the artificial sweeteners kind of satisfy that sugar sweetness that you're looking for, the pleasure, but at the same time, you're not getting those, like I said, the fiber and those other things that are more satiating. So you may actually end up eating more food because now you're happy. You're not getting the calories that are filling you up. You're not getting the fiber that's slowing down your metabolism, not your metabolism, the metabolism of the food itself. So you may actually end up eating more, and then you may actually gain weight, extra calories, those kind of things. So that's where one of those times where the natural sugars actually might be a better choice for you. But then going back to it, it's kind of dependent upon what your personal situation is. So
yeah, it's a tough thing where neither of us can give a blanket statement, I think, of like, hey, do this because it's good for everybody. And what I have understood about the alternative and fake sugars is that, so there's a difference between your mind and your body. And so the fake sugars some of them are fantastic at registering in your brain that there is something sweet here. So for that 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or whatever, your brain thinks you ate something sweet. But then after that, your body then goes to try to grab those calories that it thinks it had. And that's where they're not there. So that can be a little bit of a bonk, that can be a little bit of a crash, or just a frustration. And then you go and grab for something more, which I think is really, really fascinating. So they are doing a very good job at their job. But then from a body perspective, it may not be as helpful. And, sometimes I've been thinking of, okay, well, maybe I just do have a couple raisins or a couple dates if I want something sweet. But being mindful of that overall portion, so I don't go too far on the sugars or added sugars, but that I'm not kind of doing this weird cycle with my brain and my body. Yeah, super, super interesting. And so I'm doing some other research for these bars. There are many that have some added caffeine in them. How do you feel about those?
Again, I keep circling back to this. It's kind of like, if you need it for that kind of purpose. Caffeine, there is research that says it can be beneficial, but it has a purpose. It can give you quick energy if you're struggling, that kind of thing. But again, it's not giving you the nutrition that's going to fuel your body. You're not getting the carbohydrates that are usually a fuel that's going to replace your glycogen stores. It's not giving you all those extra things that are beneficial. It kind of like quick fix, but then you're going to crash. So then you need to get that quick fix again, and then you're going to crash. So if that's something that you need that works really well for you, but then also with caffeine, if you're not used to consuming a lot of caffeine at home, be very careful, because now you might get the jitters, you might not feel very well, get a headache, whatever the things that you might react to. So that's definitely, and this is what I recommend with backpacking food in general, is try everything at home before you're in the backcountry, and then either you dislike it, you react to it, so something happens, because that's the last thing you need, is to be hiking and you're tired and that kind of thing, and then you can't eat your food, or your food makes you sick and not feel well, that kind of thing. So again, I think there's a purpose, but then you have to make sure the purpose is what's going to fit for what your needs are.
Yeah, I think with caffeine, some folks have been pretty sensitive to it over the last few years with some other health coaches and podcasts and things. And I think a similar strategy to what you said earlier is trying to translate what you're doing normally at base camp or inside into what you do outside. So if you don't have a cup of coffee in the afternoon, then might not be a good idea to have a bar with caffeine in the afternoon, because it's going to tweak how you're processing or really affect your sleep, which is important as well for recharging. I recently just climbed Mount Baker up in Washington State a few weekends ago, and we got up at 2 a.m. to start climbing, and we didn't get the camp stove out to make morning coffee. Like, we needed to get going. So I thought that would actually be a good time for a bar with caffeine to get started and get going, because that's something that I do enjoy in the morning. So that was a kind of an interesting use case of an appropriate time to use those, where in other times I might not need that extra added caffeine.
Well, and two, if you're used to having 3 cups of coffee in the morning, you could actually end up having, withdrawal from it. So if something like were to happen, it's actually better to actually have some caffeine, so you're not going to get a headache or withdrawal and that kind of thing. So again, kind of going back to what we're saying, if that's what you're used to doing at home and that's going to serve a purpose when you're in the backcountry, then that works for you.
For sure. So as far as this bar discussion and the snack discussion, any other thoughts that we can share to guide folks?
Really, kind of the overall thing is you do you. I mean, as I cringe in Facebook groups. I've actually had to unsubscribe to a lot of the groups because there's so many people that food shame. Food shaming really upsets me. So they're like, this is the only way to do it, and then all the marketing of the products, I kind of get frustrated with that, is that eat this product to feel this way, but never ever eat this other product because it's not as, it's inferior, that kind of thing. So it's all those things, especially some of the marketing products that really frustrate me are these superfood vitamins, or the pills that squish in 12 fruits and vegetables in a tiny pill. I was like, really? And that's the thing. A lot of those aren't FDA regulated. So there's no control over what's actually in there. They're expensive. You have to take 3 a day, that kind of thing, versus just eat an apple, just eat, an avocado or something, just eat natural food, and you're going to get those vitamins and minerals, and it's less expensive, and it tastes better. You're going to get the thrill of actually eating a food versus popping some pills. So I have some strong opinions.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah. Food. You and I can talk about food for a long time, just depending on the topic. But I really appreciate you sharing some thoughts on this specific query. And what I'm hearing from you is follow what you are doing and find products that can help support that for whatever flavor, texture, style, but then look for items with less added sugar, more natural sources, good sources of fiber. And if you do need some, extra vitamins or some extra protein in there for your specific needs, then that's something to look for. But that doesn't always have to come from, a soy or whey protein isolate. It can come from peanuts. It can come from other sources.
Exactly. 100%.
Nice. So closing, are there any other food frustrations right now that you have, not just on the bar topic, but just maybe a food trend that's interesting or an additive that's really, getting you going?
Actually, I try to avoid reading about all the trends because they're so frustrating. Because I just strongly believe in just eating whole foods, the trends, and there's so much that research too is it'll prove this for a while, and then 10 years later, like, oh, we were wrong, and then, oh, this new fad is going to work, and then, oh, we were wrong. There's these side effects and that kind of thing. But then just eating whole food, when do you hear about eating whole food being bad for you? That kind of thing. So, and there's just so much, again, going all the way back to the marketing, and food's expensive. So a lot of people, I mean, we're all struggling paying mortgages right now. We're paying gas prices, all those kind of things. Is don't spend all your money on these fancy products when you can just have natural food. So that's kind of my grief.
I hear you. I think real food tastes better in whatever style that is. And for me, it's always I get really excited about a lot of ingredients and a lot of meals and flavors, and it's always about minding the portion in order to just feel satiated, feel good, and not overeat, not go too crazy with a lot of these things. But there's so many great flavors out there, so many great things that we keep creating, and food is just a continual evolution of understanding and also fusion of different ingredients and ethnicities and flavors together. So there's just a lot out there, but it can be really good and really fun, and not be something that's super stressful.
Well, and two, we haven't talked about just the processing a lot of these foods. As we kind of talked about stripping out the fiber, a lot of people, I don't think they realize, is the dehydration process of food. And a lot of these backpacking meals, as the extended period of heat, it actually destroys the vitamins. So even though you feel like you might be eating something healthier, then it's actually destroyed those vitamins. So you're not getting those vitamins, whereas freeze-dried food actually retains 97% of the vitamins. So that's a good thing, but then it's expensive. There's all these things. So just kind of looking at the processing of food too can really have an effect on the quality of it.
Nice. Yeah, thank you. I think that's a really good note to throw in there too. Yeah. So bigger topic, bigger discussion. Maybe we'll follow up with some more chats on different topics. But thank you again for sharing your thoughts. And of the list here is, I think Snickers is probably your favorite then.
It serves that purpose, a happy food. So, and kind of like I said, I'm a long distance backpacker. I've eaten hundreds of bars, so I just can't eat them anymore. So like I've recently made my own. Green belly bars are really popular. They're the meal replacement bar. So I actually bake my own now. I've concocted a recipe that has all whole foods in it. Doesn't have a lot of added sugars, natural sugars that I do. And my go-to for snacks right now is actually trail mix. I make my own trail mix. So I picked all my ingredients that are my favorites and throw it in there. So then that way that's another happy food. It's just something that I really enjoy.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Erin.
Oh, you're welcome.
Great stuff there from Erin. I've had some nice takeaways from that one. So our next interview with the nutritionist her name's Andi Miller. She is a former D1 college athlete, mom of twins, also a very seasoned veteran in the nutrition space. She's done some private practice stuff. She's worked for health clubs and also has an Instagram right here that kind of breaks down some of the misconceptions around eating and some of the healthy things out there too. So let's check out my conversation with Andi.
All right, everybody. Well, we have another nutritionist on the line here to get another perspective on this whole healthy question here. And so joining me today is Andi Miller. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
And introduce yourself to the folks out there.
My name's Andi. I'm a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian for 13 years, I think. Yeah. And I worked at a kind of outpatient weight loss clinic for about 8. And now I just work on my own from my office, which is this.
Nice. And where are you calling in from today?
Georgia, which is very hot. Ugh.
Nice. Yeah. And so you also have 2 young children.
Yep. They're 4.5. They're twins. They're noisy, but they're fun.
Nice. And so Andi and I have known each other for a number of years, and we've had a lot of great different food conversations through those years, both on enjoyment of specific meals and ingredients and things, but also on this sort of so many ways of eating and how do we navigate all of it. And again, I am not a nutritionist. I'm a curious chef that has some questions and thoughts about some of these bars out there. And I think it'd be fun to dig into some of these options. So just starting real quick is we'll start with a nice soft question. So what's your favorite food right now? What are you eating a lot of?
Oh my gosh, that's like asking what my favorite kid is. It depends on the day and it depends on the season.
Mhm.
Right now, there's my dog. It's probably like cold salads that aren't salads because it's
So not necessarily lettuce-based salads.
yeah, so maybe like some cucumbers, olives, noodles, like a vinaigrette sauce, some other
Mm.
vegetables, but salads that aren't salads and things that are cold and things that keep in the refrigerator for a long time because I have kids and I don't cook every day. But it's all seasons based. And then when it gets colder, more soups. But I like basically everything unless it's a pickle. So it's really hard to pick because I just
Got
like
it.
eat so much.
Yeah, there's a lot of tasty food out there. Yeah, I've been eating a lot of Vietnamese cold salads with the nak chom and the cold noodles, cucumbers, and yeah, it's just been definitely a go-to this summer.
Yeah. And I think there's a trend on the internet that people are like, do you ever need to eat a whole cucumber? And then they're making salads with an entire cucumber. And some people are chopping their fingers off with a mandolin, but don't do that. So there's a lot of recipes with cucumbers. So
Right,
good
for
thing to
sure.
try. Yeah.
And quickly for all you guys out there too, I'll put where to follow Andy. She has some really fun and helpful reels and clips on TikTok and on Instagram that can kind of dig deeper into some other random questions that she likes digging into. And
Random being key here.
yeah, for sure. But definitely from a nutritionist perspective and from a mom perspective, and again, how to navigate some of these interesting questions or thoughts about how best or how best not to eat. Um, so so getting into some of these questions is there are a lot of ways of eating these days, and we are only so old, so we can remember when low fat was a big thing, or cholesterol was the big buzzword. So there are a lot of ways of eating these days. And for your perspective as a nutritionist, what is healthy, quote unquote, and what are your thoughts on some of the current ways of eating and the current food trends?
So I think people are always trying to define what the perfect diet is, and there never is going to be one. But healthy kind of defined as free from illness or injury, but it also encompasses like emotional, physical, social well-being. So there's a healthy that encompasses health of your physical body, but healthy also encompasses, mental health, spiritual health, social health. And oftentimes I think we negate the aspect of that eating is a social experience, it's an emotional experience. There's a part of eating that, if a food makes you happy, that can make it healthy too. But in the sense of, mentioning all of these kind of fad diets that move through, whatever decade or year, it's just because I think people want a defined healthy diet that will make them healthy, and it's not going to exist. Balance is always going to win. Variety is always going to win, but there's always going to be subsets of populations. For example, if you have IBS, if you have some kind of bowel disease, where what's healthy for one person is not going to be healthy for another population if you have an illness. So it's a question that doesn't have an answer, that people are always going to want an answer to. So it just makes it really difficult.
Yeah, I think it is a difficult question to answer. One thing that I've noticed in creating recipes for the outdoors is one thing that people are or can be mindful of is sodium, whether that's looking for high sodium if you are expelling a lot of calories and a lot of movement, or if you do have a heart condition or some sort of other challenge, then sodium is something
bad.
that something is bad and something that you're looking for on the ingredient listing and on the nutrition label to stay away from.
Yeah.
So there's not one size fits all or one answer
No.
as far as what is healthy. And talking to other couple nutritionists, it's what's healthy for you.
Yeah, is not going
But
to be
then
healthy for someone else.
yeah, but then that doesn't necessarily provide straight up answers for people.
No, and that's why, that's why the internet can be such a dangerous place, because if the wrong people are giving nutrition advice and assuming that it's one size fits all, there was just a woman who went to the hospital with like heart palpitations and all of these really severe symptoms because she was drinking multiple electrolyte packets a day and sitting on her couch. And it's like, you don't need all of these electrolytes if you're not profusely sweating and doing a lot of exercise and shedding electrolytes. Like, you don't need more if you're not in a deficiency state. So it just can get you in a lot of trouble if you don't know what your needs are. So
For sure. So as far as the purpose of this video and chatting with you today, I sent over this big old spreadsheet of multiple things.
I love it.
Very, very fun research. And what I wanted to do is put together some classic candy bars with some newer granola bars, energy bars, plus some other desserts and other snacks that we potentially could consider for a hike or a camping trip. So as you're looking through this spreadsheet of how many did I put on here? 24 tasty snack options. Did any of them sort of pop out as interesting?
So this is going to depend on goals. I always have a bias towards things that have a little more protein, simply because protein is going to keep you a little bit fuller. But if you're hiking, it's doing a little more cardio, so I'll be a little more forgiving with the carbohydrates. And in general, things with a little more fiber, everybody could eat more fiber. So if something is low on the fiber, go away, right? I'm just going to kick you out if you don't have any fiber. Strangely enough, granted, this is low in calories, but like the macros looked relatively decent on the Nature Valley protein bars, and they're probably pretty cheap. So I'm not going to pay out my rear end for a protein bar, because there are some protein bars I've seen that are like $5 a protein bar, and you can just get out if you're going to pay $5 for a protein bar, especially if it tastes like butt. So normally when I look at protein bars, I compare just the gram per gram amount of the protein and the carb. And if the carb is significantly higher than the protein, I just don't like it.
Okay.
Because I want them to be a little bit closer together, because protein keeps you full, carbs give you energy. But if they're too far apart, it may make you hungry. It may not keep you full. The other ones that looked pretty good. So, for example, the Clif Bar has 11 grams of protein and 40 grams of carb. It might work well if you're expending a lot of energy and need a lot of carbohydrates for expending energy. But if someone's using this as a bar to help keep them full, there's 3 times as much carb as there is protein. Whereas if you look at something like the RXBar that has 12 grams of protein and 22 grams of carb, they're a little bit closer together. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Sure.
But for example, that one has 320 calories for macros that aren't that awesome, and it tastes like rear end. Like, that bar doesn't taste very good, so I won't eat it.
The RXBar.
Yeah, I think it tastes like turds. Like,
gotcha. Well, and just to confirm, so it's 320 grams or milligrams of sodium.
It is 200 calories. So maybe so retract that. So calorie wise, it's fine. The pro meal bars, the pro bars, tend to be, one of the Pro bars, the Pro protein bar has 32 carbs, 20 protein. That tends to be a little bit better, right? So if I know I'm a little bit more biased towards protein, but if someone's doing strenuous exercise, the protein is still going to help with muscle recovery, things like that. But if you are doing a lot of strenuous exercise, the carbs are going to be used for energy. So that's more helpful.
For sure. Well, I think you brought up an interesting factor to this too, is texture and flavor. Is if you don't specifically like the texture of the RXBar, then that's not the best option for you, and find something that you enjoy a little bit more. I always wonder why people go on these culinary sufferfests, that whether that's a packaged meal or bars that they don't really enjoy. And for all the older folks out there, is a lot of these bars came about because Power Bar was the only option. And
I remember that.
The flavor and the texture was so not what you want to put in your mouth. And that's where Clif Bar came about. That's where all these granola bars came about, because we wanted better options. And now we have 100 that you can choose from.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's an interesting thing too, just as far as there isn't a one size fits all based on health, and then also one size fits all based on your flavor preference or your texture preference.
Yeah, and there are a lot of different texture preferences, and there are a lot of flavors. And sometimes when you get these ones that are really high in protein, they do taste chalky. And then if you load them up with a lot of artificial fibers, they can make you quite gaseous. And if you load them up with a lot of artificial sweeteners, they can taste a little weird. So it's really based on preference, but you can find ones that you like and that don't break the bank. For
sure. So you brought up a good point about protein. So protein is very strong right now. Is it something that we need? Is there too much that we can ingest at one time?
Likely no. Research has shown that basically all of the protein you consume, you use, which is impressive. It's kind of false that you can eat too much. I mean, there are bodybuilders that consume so much protein, and you would hear about them needing kidney transplants, and you don't. You would have more problems if you ate that much than your kidneys. I've only ever put someone on a lower protein diet because they had like stage 3 renal disease, and one of them had 1 kidney, and they still did fine. So that isn't something to be worried about. But there is a little bit of a trend of protein. And do you need epic tons? No. Should you be eating it regularly through the day? Yeah. Do you need to eat it at an optimum window around your exercising for it to be useful? No, that's been debunked. You just need to eat enough during the day and you'll be fine.
Gotcha. I think that's really nice and helpful info. So as far as moving on to another kind of ingredient is sugar, carbs, and sweetener. So a lot of these bars have different ways to make them palatable and sweet. So whether that's high fructose corn syrup, cane sugar, agave, or other natural sugar sources, or their sweetener is coming from dates or prunes or raisin juice. Does our body really care where the sugar is coming from?
No. Especially with like the date sugar, it's such a dupe. It's a dupe to make it sound like it's not sugar. Yeah. Right. And high fructose corn syrup is basically like 55% fructose and like 45% sucrose, and table sugar is 50-50. So the difference is so minimal, and it's gotten so demonized that it's just ridiculous. The only reason high fructose corn syrup is a problem is when people are consuming it in beverages, because you're just like soda, because you're just consuming liquid sugar. And there is some evidence that honey is a little bit better. But when you're consuming it in a food combined with, protein, fats, fiber, other things, it's not something you need to worry about. Granted, added sugars, when you're adding sugars back to food and like an ultra processed food, usually doesn't have fiber attached to it. For example, like apples and applesauce, if you add added sugar back to applesauce, it's not going to have as much fiber in it versus the whole apple. So limiting added sugar is also helpful, but added sugar is also calculated in the overall sugar. But if you're going to be worried about a sugar, limiting added sugar is also helpful. But to your original question, when it comes down to what kind of sugar am I eating, nitpicking which one is a waste of your time. Sugar is sugar is sugar.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, especially in the amount that we're talking about. Of what it's pretty splitting hairs as far as gram comparables. Something that I do look for is the amount of added sugar, as you just mentioned. Is if there are 50 grams of added sugar, then that's straight sugar, and if I'm not going to immediately burn that up on a hike or on a run, then it's just going to hang out and sit there. So me personally, in the back of my head, it feels good and feels slightly better that the sugar is coming from a date or from apple puree or something like that, and does have a
little bit of fiber in it.
Correct. Yeah, and it does have a little bit of fiber, which is generally helpful. But I think that it's funny that our body on a kind of one-to-one comparable doesn't really care where the carbs are coming from. They just want it. The body
it breaks it down into glucose anyway, and all it sees when it breaks it down are the monosaccharides.
Right, for sure. And I think it goes back to your kind of balance and moderation comment at the beginning of sugar is a thing. Sugar is, generally fine, but when you eat a ton of it, that's probably not the best choice.
It's not fine. What I do keep my eyes on, though, are artificial sweeteners, not because they're bad, just because people have taste preferences, because some of them have different aftertastes. And some of the bars will load up on sugar alcohols, which if you eat a lot of them will go right through you. So in those cases, like for Quest bars, for example, or was it this one? Or like something like an allulose or an erythritol, those sometimes you just have to be mindful of, because, for example, allulose is a natural sweetener, which you think, oh, it's fine. But for some people, a lot of allulose can just destroy your guts. So those, you just kind of have to know your tolerance level.
Yeah, and sometimes just try it out to see how it affects your body, which is always a fun experiment. But I think it's
a not fun experiment, but at least you learn.
Right. Well, I think that's a good segue of my next question was, so for all of these alternative sweeteners or sometimes fake sweeteners, do they have a place in our food system and a place for these bars?
So in our food system, people just consume too many calories. And when people say, oh, we've gained weight because of seed oils, no, we've gained weight because people are consuming too many calories. And the introduction to artificial sweeteners in some foods can help people reduce calories. And I think there used to be, I even believed this when I was a baby dietitian, that there was a previous train of thought that artificials made people hungrier. They don't. This has been tested and debunked. They don't make people hungrier. There was thoughts that they triggered the reward center or increased people's insulin. They don't. And there was studies where they gave people in a weight loss program a water group and a group with beverages with artificial sweeteners or non-nutritive sweeteners, and the sweetener group lost more weight than the water group. So especially for people who are trying to lose weight, sweeteners have shown that they can actually reduce cravings or, satisfy the cravings for some people, and they can help, reduce cravings or help people lose weight. If people don't like them, then don't consume them, but they do have a place. And like I said, more sugar and excess calories is always going to be worse than a little bit of artificial sweetener. And then to the people who are like, oh, it ruins your gut. A diet full of too much sugar, too much saturated fat, and too much calories is going to ruin your gut, and stress and alcohol. So I'm not necessarily worried about the artificial sweeteners, but like I said before, I would be mindful of the sugar alcohols and the ones that can kind of cause some GI disturbances for some people, because that's a thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's again another part of this whole discussion, which is very complicated and very personal too, where sometimes it sort of feels better to have something with monk fruit powder in it.
Yeah.
But it might not work for somebody else.
Exactly.
I think the interesting thing from some of these more fake sugars out there is from my time as a research chef, there's this great graph. I'll try to put it up on the screen here of we're trying to match sugar because sugar is great. It has this wonderful, just easy in, delightful flavor reward center, and then it leaves. So, but then all of these other ones have these different spikes as far as how it hits your palate and how you register it. And oftentimes a lot of these products will have multiple because they're trying to match this beautiful curve. And it can work for some people. It cannot. And I think to your point earlier, as far as how it hits your palate and the flavor, for some folks, it just the aftertaste is just not great.
Well, and I'm an avid diet soda drinker, and it's not because I'm afraid of the calories. It's just that regular soda I think is disgusting. Just too
sweet.
It's just syrupy and weird. And I just, but then some people think aspartame has just a really gross aftertaste. So it's highly dependent on the person and whatever works for you.
Yeah, for sure. So going farther down on this snack spreadsheet, I did put some other interesting ones on there, from the Ho-Hos and Twinkies and Chips Ahoy, and also just a classic chocolate chip cookie. So as you're looking at these and comparing it to a Snickers or to an RXBar, are there any thoughts that you can share?
So the Otis Spunkmeyer cookie on the bottom, I was quite shocked that it had 7 grams of protein and 3 grams of fiber. I was like, huh. And only 14 grams of fat. I would have assumed it was worse because I ate more of those in high school than I would like to admit.
Yeah, well, and that's actually a muffin.
Oh, it's a muffin. Never mind. But
still.
The fact that it's a muffin makes me even more surprised, because the fat content I would have thought would have been a lot higher, because right above it you have the Costco muffin, which those are so good, but that has 38 grams of fat and then 79 grams of carbs. Like we always know that those were so high in calories, it just makes you sad.
For sure. Well, and I think for this muffin comparable I think it's important to remember that the Costco muffins are huge. So sort of dividing them in two as a comparable to the same size as the Otis Spunkmeyer muffin. But still, they're very, very high in calories and fat and some carbs.
Granted, the Snickers bars having like 12 grams of fat makes sense because they're nut-based. Yeah, it was funny because I always had my dad always kept a lot of crunchy Nature Valley bars at home. And I didn't know they have 11 grams of added sugar, and I always thought because he, ate them, that they would be, because they say it's a good example of greenwashing. Nature Valley, right? That you think it's healthy, and it's like,
For sure. Well, and I think again, it's all subjective depending on how you want to eat, but generally granola does have a higher number of, of of calories because you're adding sugar and you're adding oil in order to
Granola is
crisp it up.
mean. Steve, granola is mean. Granola is granola is a nasty, nasty food item because it's so good, and then it is just it's mean. You get like
Well,
a third
it
of a cup for like 150 calories. It's like, who eats that?
well, it's a very nutritionally calorie dense food that is very perceived as being healthy and good for you. And again, it can be in moderation, but there's flavor, there's texture, there's fiber, there's a lot of positives there, but then having a cup of granola is actually a very sturdy way to start your day.
A meal. I found some cereals that are kind of crunchy and have a similar texture, like high protein, high fiber cereals that have a similar texture that are good granola replacements.
For
So I
sure.
don't have to endure the sadness and disappointment that is granola, because I just
Yeah, it's a tough one sometimes. And so what one that I want to touch on is this breakfast cookie in row 21. So how do you feel about this breakfast cookie?
okay, so there's a lot of added sugar and it's a carb bomb. I mean, if something's a carb bomb, okay, it has 6 grams of fiber, which is decent. So for people watching, you're supposed to get around 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day. Most people don't get it. So 6 grams of fiber is actually pretty good. But and and in 300 calories is probably not enough calories for your entire breakfast. So I would hope someone would do something on the side. But 7 grams of protein versus 52 grams of carb is a very big imbalance. Granted, if you're doing something active, okay, but
Yeah, this one to me is kind of funny because I'm not a
it's a
huge fan
cookie.
of it. Well, it's a cookie, and I'm not a huge fan of sweet breakfast items, but we've sort of justified eating a stack of pancakes and eating a chocolate chip muffin for breakfast, that it's okay, but we can't have a Whole Foods or we can't have a Chips Ahoy cookie.
Well, that's what I was going to say. If you look at the Whole Foods cookie right above it, the Whole Foods chocolate chip cookie has less calories. It has less carbs. It has the same amount of added sugar, or it has the same amount of carbs, but it has a little more added sugar, less protein, but it has less total calories.
Yeah, super
So
interesting.
you're right. So it's like marketed as a breakfast cookie, but the cookie you can't eat. You're right. You can eat a breakfast cookie for breakfast, but you can't eat a cookie for breakfast.
Right. That's a whole nother interview for sure. So, kind of wrapping this up here is for folks out there, it sounds like that healthy is subjective. Pay attention to what you need to pay attention to. But is there a huge difference in having a Snickers with peanuts or a granola bar or a muffin as a snack?
It's like I said, it's going to depend on your goals, right? If you know you're going to wake up and be really active, going for something with a little higher calories and a little higher carbs and a little less protein, totally fine. If you know that you're not going to be as active and you need something that's going to keep you fuller longer, I would go with something higher in protein and kind of more equal on the protein and carb, but still trying to focus on less added sugar and higher fiber. But when in doubt, like, make sure you like eating it, because nothing is like, there are some disgusting protein bars out there, and it is not worth making your stomach feel like crap or eating something gross. Like, life is too short to do that.
Cheers. I totally agree. It's like we have these meals and these meal times, and why not have something that you're excited for and that you like? And I think there is something that's not very quantifiable on a spreadsheet is satiation and enjoyment. And when you have something that you really like and it triggers something that makes you happy, then you're going to have a better time.
Well, and there is some research that I haven't pulled up in a while that when you're enjoying your food, you digest it better. And stress will actually negatively affect your gut bacteria. So there is science showing that when you like your food and when you're enjoying what you're eating, it's legitimately better for your digestive system. So don't eat what you hate.
Don't eat what you hate. So it's not gonna be a good time.
No.
Awesome. Well, Andy, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. It's been helpful for me to wrap my head around which bars to eat and or to not eat, or to just eat a cookie or not eat a cookie. But thanks for the insight.
My pleasure.
Man, a lot of good stuff there from both Aaron and Andy. And they agreed on some things. There are slightly different counter thoughts as well, which I think is a good thing for overall discussion. And so here are my takeaways. And I wrote them down because I think they're important. So one is sugar. Look for natural sugars. And dates and figs and raisins, those can be some very good things. And why that's important is because it has some extra fiber and some micronutrients. So if you're just getting your calories from straight sugar or high fructose corn syrup, apple juice concentrate, or any one of those other agave out there, the greenwashing on some of these things is very real, and it's probably not the best option for you. So look for sugar from natural sources so you can get some fiber and some micronutrients, which can be helpful. It sounds like we all need more fiber in our life. And with sugar is minimizing the added sugar. All of these things have some sugar in them, and sugar is fine in moderation, especially when you're active, but be mindful of how much just straight sugar is being added. Something to think about. Protein can be very helpful, and it's a big old macronutrient that we need as well. And it can help you stay full, which is a very good thing when you're going for a long day, and helps keep all of our muscles moving. So protein can be good. Maybe we don't need, like 5 12-gram protein bars in a day, because that's just might be a little bit too much. But protein can be a good thing and is a good thing to be mindful of. Calories. What's funny about these things, there's minimal difference on these. And for me, if it's within 30 or 50 calories, it's pretty much a push, especially if I'm going for a hike or I'm being active. Like, that's not that much of a difference. If you are trying to be calorie conscious, then you do you, absolutely. But for me, that's really not that much. And when you compare some of these on the spreadsheet, they are almost identical in their ingredients, their calories, maybe a few extra grams of sugar or a few extra fat calories here, and maybe some added protein, but they're all really darn close. And a big takeaway that I took away from this is that you do you. There are so many ways to eat. I can't tell you how to eat perfectly. Neither can Andy, or neither can Aaron. There are so many ways to eat, and it's changing and evolving all the time. But you do you. If you need to restrict your sugar, or you need to restrict your calories for some reason, do it. If you have a specific deficiency that you need to be mindful of, like I do, like I am low in magnesium, potassium, I need to keep eating that, and so I very, very, very much look for the micronutrients in there. You do you. So choose one on this list, or any one of the other ones at the grocery store that fits your needs the best. Man, I don't know what it is about Snickers, specifically almond. They are so good. So here are my final thoughts. And my personal opinions on my question here is, which is healthier? It's really subjective, right? You do you as far as what makes you the happiest and what is going to fuel your dietary needs the best. And also for your trip. Sometimes you need a little bit more calories. Sometimes you're going to need a few less calories. Really just depends. But as I look at this spreadsheet, it is so similar. So many of these are so close. And do I want to feel bad about eating a Snickers almond for breakfast instead of a, nutty chocolate muffin? No, I think I'm going to be fine. Do I want to do that every day? No, but we also justify eating a stack of pancakes with a bunch of maple syrup and fat on top, and that is an acceptable way to start your breakfast. Yeah, don't tell me that one's okay, or this isn't very different. But again, looking at the spreadsheet, it's so funny because a chocolate chip cookie is very similar to a muffin, very, very similar to these other things. And also a big takeaway, and granted, the Costco muffin is massive, like it is like 2 or 3 muffins in one, but man, if you need some calories on the trail, pack a couple Costco muffins. Those things will keep it going. But thanks for coming along for my deep dive into snacks here today, and hopefully this can be helpful for you to make the right choice for the best bar for you. But get out there, cook something amazing somewhere awesome, or have a great snack. You know, the other thing that I loved about what they, both Andy and Aaron said, is that find something, specifically texture and delivery, that makes you happy. If you have a power bar or if you have an RX bar and you don't like the texture and you keep putting it down your mouth, your body and your brain is not going to be very excited or not be very satiated with that. And you're going to be wanting more. You're going to be wanting more. So find something that works for you, that it really satisfies. And I guess, you know, Snickers does satisfy. Is that what they say? They didn't tell me to say that. But get out there. Boca boca. And pack it out. Do it.